Hello, it's time for Combat Patrol Carnage. Hello and welcome back to another special 20-issue review. So yeah, we've finally finished issue 40. Videos are currently being uploaded this week, and this one should be hopefully up around Wednesday as well, once I get it edited and everything. But yeah, hopefully you'll be able to enjoy this as we look back at the last 20 issues. So 21 through to 40, in which we see a collection grow with 2 new combat patrols, a bunch of new paints, new scenery card and rules, of course, as well as all the lore and short stories that we've been given throughout the delivery. I've also made 1,000 point lists for each of the 2 factions for a little bit of advice on where you can take each of these forces next. Yeah, I've leaned kind of heavily into aspects that the combat patrols have already started leaning into. So it'll be a nice, easy way for you to enhance these combat patrols to your own personal tastes, with a little bit of advice from myself. So before we hit the table and take a look at all of our models, don't forget to, of course, do all the usual. Like this video if you're enjoying the content, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and drop me a comment down below. Have you enjoyed the last 20 issues? Which of the 2 combat patrols are your favourites? And what are you looking for most in the future? I know I ask this question a lot, but I really do like hearing back from you guys. And yeah, I'm looking forward to quite a few of the patrols. Kind of interested to do the orcs, as I've never actually touched any of the models we get in the collection. Same for the Votan, I've never actually worked on those models before, so I'm going to enjoy painting and building those guys up. And the same goes for probably the World Eaters as well. Gene-Sealers and Cadians, I've used to collect Gene-Sealers back in the old days when they first came out, but kind of gave up on them back along. Haven't done much of the new Cadian. I built a kill team for a friend of mine, and that's about as far as I've gone using the new Cadian shock troops. But yeah, I am looking forward to all these combat patrols, and I'm hoping towards the end of the collection we do get a campaign sort of thing where we can link games between our combat patrol forces, much like we did with Imperium. I know it's going to be harder seeing as we have 9 unique factions, but we could easily combine the Imperial factions, the Xenos factions and the Chaos factions together to make larger forces. So yeah, looking forward to seeing how things go in the end of this collection. Finally then, don't forget Combat Patrol Carnage is proudly sponsored by warbay.shop, your one-stop supply for all your hobby needs. They stock the whole hobby shebang, everything you need, models, paints, gaming equipment, as well as decorative flourishes such as artworks, pin badges, coins, etc. Check them out, there's a link in the video description. They have their own physical store as well, so who knows, you might find your next hobby project at a bit of a discount. Right, let's head to the table and we'll look at our latest 20 issues. So here we are with the latest 20 issues of Combat Patrol, our 2 new Combat Patrols, and of course our paints. So just like last time, we'll go through everything. I'll give you the overview of each of the patrols, what I think of their colour schemes, the models included, and how to expand the forces. I'll then have a look at the hobby supplies, which isn't a lot this time around. It's less paints. We've only got 2, 4, 6, 8 of them. We'll also look at the gaming supplies. Not a lot. There are a few tokens that I've got in a pot to the side, so I'll bring those in when we need them. And then, of course, I'll give you my final thoughts on the contents of the magazine, etc., and everything so far. So here we go then with part 1, Combat Patrol Overviews. So we'll kick things off with the Eldari. So the first of our new combat patrols is the Eldari. This is an interesting force as we have a Psyker leader, so fragile unit but can be quite deadly. Definitely needs the protection of the Guardians that they can join. You get a nice unit of infantry in the form of the Guardians, as I mentioned, a support unit in the form of the Wind Riders, which are our faction's patrol squad unit. So these guys can be split into 2 units of 3, which will mean they can do a lot more on the battlefield. Then we have our monster / heavy support sort of unit, which is the Wraith Lord. Our bonus unit also leans into the Spirit Host, which is one of my favourite aspects of the Eldari, which is our Wraith Guard here. So painting these guys are very similar to the Space Marines in the fact that we've got 2 main colours to look at. We've got the main basic red, and then we've got the white accent colour. They've also painted very similarly, where we've been recess shading around the armour panels. Our Wraith Lord is something a little different. It's nice, it's a big monster as opposed to some of the other units we've had. It's a really old kit as well, but still holds up. I would like them to do a more finely detailed version, maybe some new weapon options. Maybe bring back the old Forge World Wraith Seer, which would be quite nice, add a Wraith HQ sort of model. But yeah, the paint guide has been interesting. We've been doing the same old basic sort of layering and then shading down at the moment, which is all we've been able to do really. But yeah, they are a nice unified force at least, and they can play. They're a bit of a glass hammer. They're fragile, but they can hit hard. So you got to make sure you take that into consideration when you're playing with these guys. Play to your benefits, which is you're fast, you're deadly at range, and you can go for control on the late game. Plus you have the ability to gain Fate Dice, which is your faction ability with the Guardians on their objectives. So another thing I would mention is the colour scheme is the basic sort of Sam Han, which the poster boys of the Eldari. Although me personally, as I've already shown on video, I do love my Iandan army. Here's my Wraith Lord, painted using only colours we get in the magazine. As usual, I am terrible at highlighting silver, so I might have to repaint over that. But yeah, all in all, I love this kit. It can be opposable. I was trying to get a more sweeping sort of pose, but the legs are a bit staticky. You're best off to cut and repin, and you can get some better poses. I've seen some really awesome things done with these guys. I think my favourite one was my old one, which I built with the 2 bent arms going in towards the middle and the sword being held in a defensive sort of pose. So yeah, that's my personal Wraith Lord. Yeah, that's how I paint my Iandan. And yeah, really cool, nice, simple colour scheme, at least in the collection. A lot less daunting than yellow, I guess, and white. But yeah, interesting nonetheless. So moving on, let's think about how we're going to expand this force. So we've already got a nice, good core to the army. So we'll have the basic patrol plus our additional unit there of the Wraith Guard. Then on top of that, I'm going to add a Spirit Seer as a secondary HQ. I've got one to show here. So this is a Spirit Seer. They basically help Wraith units become a little bit better and guide them through battles, etc., and gives them a bit of a benefit while on the field. Keeping with the Wraith aspect, I chose the Wraith Host, which allows you to take Wraith Guard and Wraith Blades as battle line units. So I've added a unit of Wraith Blades to the army, which are the close combat version. So they've got the axes and the shields for the more durable, more punchy sort of unit. And finally then, seeing as the base combat patrol does take up quite a lot of points anyway, as we have 2 rather pricey units, the only other thing I've added in a transport vehicle to give the Wraith Blades and the Spirit Seer a way of getting up the board and into combat quickly. So I've included a Wave Serpent, the good old classic Eldari transport tank. So that brings it around to a good spot on 1,000 points. But yeah, you can go different ways. You could also utilise the Aspect Warrior host if you want to, utilising the Howling Banshees from the premium set that we had with this delivery or this wave of issues if you've gone premium. And at this point, really, why wouldn't you have done it as such a better deal? And you got some awesome stuff in the mix. But yeah, you could do a lot of aspect warriors, which is pretty cool. There's some nice new kits out, and there's a Phoenix Lords you could add as well if you wanted to. So yeah, there is a nice lot of choices when it comes to Eldari. I mean, if you wanted to, you could lean on the Sam Hahn Wind Rider host and take a load more jet bikes, Vipers, etc. You could go on Baeltan and go Guardian Heavy, or like me, Iandan, and go Wraith Host Heavy, which is what I've kind of leaned into. But there we have it. That is a look at the Eldari. Next up, then, the Chaos Space Marines. So we reach those bad boys in spiky armor, the Heretic Astartes. So this patrol boasts some insane firepower and melee prospects. Leading the force, of course, is our Dark Apostle, so a corrupted version of a chaplain. He can lead the Chaos Legionnaires, who are a sadly mixed unit, but they are our combat squad unit for the patrol. So what I like to do is put the 4 bolters and heavy bolter in one squad, let them sit back on an objective and gun from afar. And then the 3 chainswords, Melter and the Champion, go with the Apostle and can run up and mess around the mid-board. Speaking of mid-board, we've got plenty of mid-board support with our Hellbrute, if he can get up the board quick enough for his stumpy little legs, and movement of only 8 inches, I think. So yeah, he does add a bit of punch. That hammer is powerful. The plasma cannon's unpredictable due to it being a D3 weapon, but if it does get some good shots, it can be pretty dangerous, taking out even Terminators, possibly. And we have our range support in the form of our Havocs here. So our champion of his plasma gun. We've got 2 anti-tank guns with a missile launcher and las cannon. Then we've got 2 anti-infantry guns with the chain gun and the heavy bolter. So yeah, a nice little mix. And to add to that, our bonus unit is the Terminators, and these guys really do add a bit of a punch. They're a good unit for combat and range, as they have guns and fists. Sadly, they lack the teleport deep strike abilities that the Loyalist Terminators have, because if we check their datasheet, their only ability is the Dark Pax rule, so they don't have any core deep strike ability, sadly, which is really annoying. It would have been nice if they had the deep strike. I believe they do have deep strike in their full rules, but for combat, I guess they thought that might be a bit too overpowerful. But then again, we do have the Terminators in the other Space Marine Patrol. But yeah, this force definitely leans more into a nice ragtag band of a Chaos Cult. And that's what I'm leaning into when it comes to expanding this force. But first, let's talk about painting. Sadly, painting is where this army does fall down. It's a slobber knocker when it comes to getting all that detail done. Painting all that trim is tedious, but it is one of the standout details of the Black Legion, that and their dark black armor. As I've stated before, a better way to paint this would be to paint all that trim first, utilizing a gold primer, and then shade and dry brush highlight. And then after that, use contrast paints if you've got them or have access to them, and blocking your armor afterwards. And then after that, you can just pick out all your small details. So loincloths, guns, teeth and bones, horns, etc. There can be other ways to paint it. In the collection, we have got quite a few other colors. So I'm working on a video that will be coming out hopefully soon, which will be painting these guys up as Iron Warriors. You could also make use of the reds to paint Word Bearers or even Red Corsairs, although personally I prefer Corn Red for Word Bearers. You could try doing Alpha Legion, though we really only have Coelia Green Shade and it's not that strong a pigmented paint. So you'd have to do a bright sort of silver and then do a couple of layers of the Coelia Green Shade to get that sea green armor. Night Lords would be a good one. You could use how I've done the dark blue on my Iandan, so Macragge blue, shade all over with Nuln Oil, then an edge highlight of Calgar blue. Yeah, there's other ways you can paint them that aren't as tedious and frankly time consuming and infuriating at times as the Black Legion colour scheme. But I know what the collection's going for. It's going for that basic poster boy sort of colour scheme. And yeah. Black Legion are one of my favourites. I really do need to get around to building and painting Abaddon. I have a pretty big force already, as I said, we had the premium kit with Imperium, which is painted in Black Legion, and I believe this magazine is using the very same paint guide as that did, as we've seen from the Demon Prince premium kit. We'll eventually be highlighting the black armour using blue layer paint. So expanding the force, as I mentioned, we're leaning into the Chaos Cult. So utilizing everything the magazine does, as well as the premium kit, we're adding the Demon Prince as a nice big centerpiece model, and sort of story-wise, the culmination of the cult, bringing up a champion to a demonhood level. So yeah, if you've got premium, you can already add this guy into the force. If you haven't, he's a pretty good kit if you can get it cheap enough. Keeping on to the cult side of things, I've got two big units, well, one big unit, one small unit of Chaos Cultists. So a big blob of 20 to pretty much swarm objectives, and a smaller squad of 10 that can run interference with opponents' units. So yeah, this leans into the Chaos Cult. We've got our mortal followers. It frees up your heavier armored units to be a bit more defensive and survive until the later game, which will be a lot more beneficial to you. And yeah, so yeah, 30 cultists in total is a nice addition to the army. And of course, again, this hasn't actually added much to it, but it does round the force up to 1,000 points. I did toy with adding Possessed and maybe a Rhino, but I ended up going a little over points. I probably would have done that more if I'd not took the Demon Prince. That could have been an option. But yeah, sadly it leaves a few odd points, and there's not much you can really choose to go with. As there's quite a few overpriced, or rather pricey, pointed units in the Codex, sadly. But yeah, other than that, there's a few other ways you could go. Add more Legionnaires would be a good choice. Taking 2 squads of 10 would be pretty cool. Adding the kill team version of the Legionnaires, so you got the specialist characters that you can take in the unit, that'd be pretty cool as well. So yeah, another way you could do is go a demon host. So lean more into the Chaos Tainted Machines. We're adding the Mauler Fiend to the World Eaters, so that'd be a nice, could be choice to add to the Force, or Forge Fiend, maybe even a Helldrake if you wanted to go down the route of a Flyer. But yeah, there we have a few things for choice. Up next then, we take a look at our hobby supplies. We don't get a lot. We have 8 new paints to add to our collection, so 4 base paints and 4 shade paints. And we have 1 new brush, a medium shade brush, which is starting to get a bit bent from its time spent in storage. But yeah, nice brush to help add shade. It's a good idea to use your medium layer brush from your subscriber gift. As it's a nice thin tip, especially when it comes to recessing stuff like our Eldari models. But when you're doing your all over shades on areas such as the gold trim on our Black Legion there, yeah, this brush is definitely a lot easier and better to use. So looking at the paints, we've actually only used 7 out of these 8. We're yet to use Orc Flesh, but we will be in issue 41 as we paint our first Orc model. So yeah, Avalanche Sunset, Catch and Flesh and Mechanical Standard Grey are great base paints. I've used Avalanche Sunset for my Iandin. Catch and Flesh is good. It's used on a lot of leathers and furs, so we'll be highlighting these up different colours later on when we get more layer paints. Mechanical Standard Grey is good. We've only used it on a few small areas, notably our Apostles' Disciples here, their underrobes. You could use it on some of the cables to break up the different colours. Instead of having all fleshy tubes, you could have some grey tubes. So yeah, that's not too bad for our base paints. Looking at our shade paints, so we're finally being able to shade our models. We have liquid gold, otherwise known as either Agrax Earthshade or Nuln Oil. Both these are great for making your models really stand out in detail. If you've got a lot of warm colours like reds, bones, etc., a nice all-over shade of Agrax really ties the models together. I do suggest filling it though, because it can be a bit overpowering. But if you've got a lot of dark colours, Nuln Oil is brilliant, helps again tie everything together and makes your models really stand out, and you can see where you need to go with your layers, etc. We've also got Caribou Crimson, which we've only been using really to shade pink areas. So I actually used quite a lot out of that pot, about halfway through. Blimey. I suppose we did use it to shade the flesh on our Hellbrute and a lot of our Tyranids earlier on. And finally we've got Rycon Flesh Shade, our newest shade paint, which we got with Auric Flesh. And yeah, it's good. We use it to shade all of our flesh details, our gold trims, etc. And all in all, it's a pretty good universal colour. Again, you could use this as an all-over shade for a army that has a lot of warm colours. Say if you've got a lot of golds and bones again, etc. It'd be a nice shade for that. So yeah, that's not a lot to say. We've got some good stuff, but we're going to be getting some more in the future. We're getting a lot more layer paints now, so hopefully we'll be looking at layering. And in issue 44, we're finally basing all of our models, so it's going to take quite a lot of that Astro Granite to base 4 combat patrols worth of models currently. And yeah, we're getting some more shades as well. Our final shade, actually, we only get 5 in the collection. Our final shade is Coelia Green Shade, which we'll be using to shade down a lot of the Orc skins, etc. Adding spiritual glows to our Eldari Force weapons, and smoke and brain nodules on our Tyranids as well. But that's in the future. Part 3 then, let's take a look at our gaming supplies. So we didn't get as much. We did, of course, get our second battle mat, so we now have a full-size combat patrol board, either as a barren wasteland or as the interior of a Space Marines landing bay. We got 4 new terrain cards, 2 craters, a buried container, and a pile of barrels. We've, of course, got all of our faction ability cards and data cards for our Eldari and Chaos Space Marine Combat Patrol, as well as the start of our Orcs, as I haven't unpunched these yet. And seeing as we're now learning the core rules, we've also got the core stratagem cards. And tokens, we've gained some command point tokens, and I think some victory point tokens have been our most recent additions to our token pile. Other than that, we've also been looking at full combat patrol missions. I haven't shown them here as they're not really part of the collection. They're more something I've done for myself. But I photocopied and laminated the tick charts that are on the backs of the missions. I've also photocopied and laminated the missions and their deployment maps as easy reference cards. But yeah, it's nice that we're learning a little bit more about the full game. We're also learning the core rules, which is a nice new section to the magazine. So yeah, we haven't had much in the way of gaming supplies, just our cards, and as I said, we've been going into the core rules. It's annoying we're still being slowly fed information. We have had pretty much the faction abilities for the Eldari already. We haven't been given their secondaries, enhancements, etc. yet. We've got the cards for the Chaos Space Marines, but we haven't had any tutorials yet for the using their faction abilities. Hopefully, maybe in the next delivery, it would be nice, as we would I at least would like to play a full combat patrol using everything available and utilising their full rules. But as I'm doing it, I'm doing things as the magazine introduces it, as I've mentioned before. But there we go. Speaking of introducing things in the magazine, let's move on to part 4 with the contents and my final thoughts on the collection so far. So looking at the contents of the magazine, I think it's definitely grown and improved. We've seen a lot of focus now on our 2 new factions, which has been quite interesting, as well as a little bit peeking at the Orcs, which are our next faction. So for the Eldari, we've learned pretty much about the basic craft worlds. We've also learned about their twisted twins, the Dark Eldar or the Drukhari. We've also learnt about the Harlequins, a specialised sub-faction of the Eldari who are trying to bring about the fall of Slaanesh. Chaos Space Marines, sticking to the Eldari, sorry. We've had some nice short stories. We've had Mind War, of course, in issue 21. We've also had the War story, in which the Eldari are trying to recover fallen spirit stones from an orc encampment. And yeah, we've had some nice new lore again and stories focusing on these guys. Same for the Chaos Space Marines. We've looked at the different traitor warbands, the heretic renegades as well. We've even looked at all the different Chaos Gods now. I think we don't look at Slaanesh until the next issue. But yeah, we've looked at most of the Chaos Gods now, and we've looked more at the Black Legion as a whole, including the Lord and Master Abaddon there. Short stories, we've had a couple for Chaos Space Marines. We've had that nice two-parter, which is pretty cool. Seeing a squad of Chaos Space Marines trying to recover the sealed, banished essence of his former master, a Demon Prince, and trying to recover it from Imperial and Eldari hands. We've also had a continuation, of course, of Sergeant Ashkerton, as he's faced many enemies, including traitors, Eldari, and we're about to see him encounter orcs in the next installment in issue 41. Lore Articles has also had a little bit of information still for Imperium. We've looked at things like Forge Worlds, and we've also been looking at the galactic map as a whole and some of the war zones of the galaxy as well. So we've looked at Bastior, and we've looked at the the Pariah Nexus. So yeah, nice double-page spreads with awesome maps, information on characters as well. It's all been pretty exciting. The collector articles have been nice. We've had, of course, our usual naming articles for all of our units, giving a little bit of information about the unit itself, as well as its data record, which has been, again, pretty useful and handy. Nice to add allowing personal touches to your forces, which is nice. It's the rule sections, though, in this set of issues that things have really started to improve, as we've been getting the core rules now, which have been a great help to playing games of Combat Patrol. We've also been getting the core missions for the Combat Patrol specific missions. So I've not got them on camera here, but I have made up my own laminated boards with the tick chart as well as the mission rules and deployment maps for easy reference. So yeah, definitely looking forward to playing some of those games in the near future. The core rules, again, as I mentioned, has been a great addition. Been slowly drip fed to us, sadly, again, but yeah, I don't think having it all in one go would go down too well for a lot of people. It's a lot to take in at once. Being given to us a couple of pages, I think the most we had was 3 or 4 pages at once, is pretty okay. Gives you enough to take in and understand. I think the most recent one was issue 39. We had a big focus on terrain. We've had tutorials again, as usual, helping us mostly utilize our new units and again come to grips with rules, especially looking at issue 40, where we learn about strategic reserves, which was covered in issue 39's rules section, and yeah, we get to implement it in issue 40. It was pretty cool. So yeah, on to my final thoughts then. So I'm going to try and be critical in places, but I will be majorly positive here. I can safely say that this magazine has improved, warranted. There are still some mistakes, be it spelling mistakes, incorrect titles, incorrect text in, say, the data card for the Wraith Guard, where it tells you you can use these guys in your Eldari Space Marines Combat Patrol. I still think that's funny. Overall, though, it feels a little more polished. Some of the issues even have a premium feel, especially the last two, where it's been dedicated to detailed build guides, as well as a nice dedicated paint guide, and then going straight into our play articles. So sadly no lore in them, but it does give us a more focus on the hobby side of things. One thing that I would like to say and see a continuation of would be the Tacticas. We've had it only really in this 20 issue for the Wind Riders. Kind of had it for the Havocs, but that was more in the actual mission rules rather than an actual dedicated Tactica page. Would have been nice to see it for more of the other units in the armies, giving you advice on how best to implement them in games, what they're good at, etc. So I need to mention a few negative points. As I mentioned earlier, rules again have been dripped to us. We don't have the tutorials to implement the full rules for the Chaos Space Marines Combat Patrol. We're currently running them without their faction ability and without their enhancements, secondary objectives, and stratagems. The Eldari, we've had their faction ability, we just haven't had their enhancements, stratagems, and secondary objectives introduced to us yet. So would be nice if they gave this to us quicker, especially maybe with the issues that the rule cards are supplied with, just so we can get into more full games and utilize the fullness of our combat patrols a lot quicker. I mean, Dark Pacts isn't a hard enough faction ability to understand. It's literally you pray to the Dark Gods for a boon, then you roll a dice after your prayer, or take a leadership test after your prayer, and if you fail, you'll suffer D3 wounds. So yeah, you'll either give all of your weapons lethal hits or all of your weapons sustained hits, which we've pretty much covered before. So it would have been nice if they had included this sooner, rather than, well, obviously the next 20 issues, as it's looking like. As I mentioned, core rules, I do see why they drip fed this to us. It would have been a bit overwhelming to have it all in one page, one go. But it has been in quick succession, which is nice. It's been literally one page in one issue, one page in the next issue, so on, so on, so on, so on. And again, as previously mentioned, I think a negative is we haven't had that many Tactica pages. Would have been nice to have them for all of our bonus units, as we saw with the Chaos, with the Space Marine Chaplain and the Parasite and Mortrex. We had one for each of those. It would have been nice to have one for the Wraith Guard and one for the Chaos Terminators. One last good point to round this video out then, I've really liked the introduction of modifying scenarios, which we've seen towards the last 5 or so issues. Especially the Hellbrutes one, where you could change up the waves of enemies. So when you get new combat patrols in the collection, if you want to try the Hellbrute out against a specific faction, you can take some units from that faction. There is one more modifying mission to come, which is in issue 41. It's the Orc one, so you can choose to face off against different enemies with your new Orc War boss, which is pretty cool. But that's pretty much it. One last thing there before we move into my final outro and final thoughts. We did have, totally forgot to mention it, final subscriber gift, which was delivery 7, which was issues 21 and 22 plus 19 and 20, I think it was. We got our Primaris company champion, and here he is painted up, ready for my Blood Angels. So this is where you can see that I've used an all-over shade. I've used Thin Dagrax Earthshade, as all the colours pretty much share a similar tone. So I've got the reds and the golds and the brown tans there. And yeah, just a shade all over with Agrax has really unified the model. And yeah, I'm going to hopefully work through the remainder of my Ultimate Starter set soon for my Get Started series, which is way overdue being finished, as I would like to replace the Space Marines Ultramarines combat version of the Combat Patrol with my lovely painted Blood Angels. I even have a rather nicely converted Terminator Captain with, again, Relic Weapon and Storm Bolter as he's meant to be equipped with. But this one sort of represents Captain Carlane of the Archangels, the Blood Angels First Company. And yeah, if you want to check out the playlist for Get Started 2, where I actually have a video where I showed you how to convert up this rather awesome model. Yeah, there we have it. That's another 20 issues down and 2 more combat patrols under our belt. We're not even halfway through yet. That won't be until next delivery, where we hit issues 42 to 46. And our halfway point finally arrives with issue 45. So yeah, it pushed us halfway to the 90 issues. And we'll also be halfway through the Orc Combat Patrol with next delivery, as we get a double paint issue and 2 sets of Orc Boys adding to our Orc Combat Patrol, which we start in issue 41. Let me know if you've enjoyed this review of the past 20 issues and, of course, our newest models. I'd like to hear if you have a particular combat patrol as of the first 4 we've had so far that you really do enjoy playing with. Haven't had a chance to fully utilize the Chaos Space Marines as a unified force yet, but come issue 42, when we have no play mission as it's a paint issue, I got a feeling I'm going to be taking these guys for a spin against possibly their loyalist brethren, the Ultramarines. But yeah, all that's left for me to do then is to say thank you all very much for watching. Thank you for the support. If you do support me, whether it's liking or commenting on these videos, or if you want to help support me out on Patreon or one of my other social support ways, there's links and stuff in the video description as usual. I hope you'll join me as we continue this absolute carnage of a journey, and yeah, we'll end up with 9 awesome combat patrols by the end of this 90 issue run. I'm off to edit this video together and think about starting filming the Orc War Boss issue as well. So the future of the magazine looks bright, even if the far future is very grimdark. So all what's left for me to do is say thank you again for watching. Hope you've enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time on Combat Patrol Carnage. Goodbye.